Can you believe that less than 15% of people actually finish self-study online courses? It's pretty wild considering the amount of money people spend on courses like NASM. Although you'll never find these stats on the fitness certification companies, you can probably assume they're not far off. Does it mean the certifications are bad? Probably not, but it's really how most people are approaching the entire process that's broken. So why is it that so many people struggle with self-study programs? There's so many potential benefits, right? If we look at some of the pros of getting into a self-study program, right, it's convenient. Chances are if you're watching this video and you're signed up for something like the NASM-CPT or you're looking into it, you probably have a job, you work full-time, you've got kids, you've got so many things going on in your life that the idea of getting into like a college classroom, it's not even feasible. And thankfully, I don't think it's necessary. But the idea that it's convenient, I can fit it in, I can do it online, that's a great benefit, right? It's a great benefit, especially if you're just trying to start to dabble and get a sense of like, do I like this training thing enough? And so that is definitely a pro for getting into a self-study program. And for the most part, especially when you start to compare it to much more involved routes, like going to college for exercise science, getting into other programs, for the most part, they're a little bit cheaper because it's a course that's already designed and delivered to you. And this is probably one of the reasons why the e-learning industry has just grown so much in every industry. But as we saw in the beginning of the video, unfortunately, the completion rates are pretty low. And that has a lot to do with the cons. And this really ties in, guys, to the ways that we learn. And before we go into these, I want you to think for a second back to the periods of your life when you were learning more. Probably like grade school, middle school, high school, college, whatever levels you went into, and think about what was happening, what was there that forced you into learning whatever it was that you're learning. Chances are a big part of you seeing progress and doing well in classes, with sports, with coaches, is that there was a huge component of accountability and consequences, right? Write that down on a piece of paper. Accountability and consequences. Think about the classroom. You had a teacher, an instructor who was there guiding the entire process. Everything you did every day was organized and structured, and there were assignments to test whether or not you were learning the information, and then there were also exams at the end of the course to make sure that you got to that point. Now that pressure is a really important part of it because the sad fact is, as humans, most of us are okay with failing ourselves, but we're not okay with failing other people. I'm not saying that applies for everyone, but for a vast majority of people, it's true. And the statistics I mentioned at the beginning of the video kind of show and prove that, because unfortunately, a lot of self-study programs, not only do they lack structure, right? You would think you get inside, everything's gonna be organized with timelines, but for the most part, you get inside and it's all on you, which is nice and convenient, but for a lot of us, the act of actually getting something done in an appropriate timeline doesn't serve most of us, right? Most of us need a plan for exactly what to do, not just every day, every week, every month, you know, timelines on when I should get somewhere. And oftentimes, not every self-study program, but definitely if you're looking at like the NASM-CPT or any of the certifications, most of them lack a really specific structure to make sure you get through at an appropriate timeline. But looking what I was mentioning about having an instructor, being in a classroom with other people, there's a lack of accountability. Like I can think back to showing up to football practice, and I had this crazy little coach, Coach Valadez, who still sticks in my head. Maybe he's watching this video, I don't know. There was no way I wasn't gonna know the plays because I did not wanna let him down, right? Like making sure that I succeeded not just for myself, but for him and for the team and for everyone was a big reason why I did so well. Same thing in classes, right? I had teachers that I loved, and last thing I wanted to do was like not turn in an assignment and feel like I was letting them down. So that's a big component. Don't miss out on the fact that most of us need some accountability, even with things like this that we care about. On top of that, interaction and community, right? Most of the classroom environments where you did most of your learning in your life, it was with other people, right? We're social creatures. We were meant to have dialogue and discussion and ask questions. And unfortunately, in most of your self-study programs, you don't get to do that. And that's a big, big miss out for a lot of people. And a reason why you might not really be understanding the concepts you're learning. There's a lack of feedback. There's no one testing you on your information, telling you how you're doing, helping you make some changes to your approach. And like I mentioned, a lack of consequences. Unfortunately, you might just let yourself down, which for a lot of us might not be enough, right? All of a sudden, it's like we've got 3 weeks before our exam and we've barely touched the material. Most of us need some accountability, and we kind of need some consequences, right? consequences of someone else checking in on us. How are you doing? And unfortunately, because of all these things, lack of structure, community feedback, accountability, a lack of consequences, right? No one there smacking you with a ruler. Unfortunately, it leads to a lack of success. And the other piece is that most of us also need more engagement. Learning is meant to be a collaborative, cooperative process, right? You look at countries throughout the world that are excelling in education, they're not just lecturing, right? They're not just talking to someone. That there's conversation, there's feedback, there's activities that are done in this process. And so I want to show you guys is what's called Bloom's taxonomy. Let's take a step back just from NASM and let's just look at learning, education, right? Many of you guys might not know this, but I was actually an education major. I was going to go on and become a teacher. Haha, I guess I get to teach now. But I've always been really interested in how people learn things, mostly because I was fortunate to learn things pretty easily. But as I look back now, I was just in really great settings that helped me do it as well. Anything that you want to learn in life, right? Especially as we look at like different careers, you want to get into programming, there's these levels of mastery from the bottom layer of just remembering facts all the way to the top of creation. And now the truth is many of us may not get here, especially in fitness, exercise science, because the idea at this top level of this Bloom's taxonomy is like new and original work, right? A lot of things have been done in the fitness industry. I would even say for me, for as long as I've been in the industry, I don't know that I'm at the creation level yet. Maybe I'll get there coming up with new and novel concepts. But it all starts here at this base level. This idea of like, hey, as we start to introduce new information, like the NASM material, there are terms, there are facts. It's like a whole new language that you kind of have to learn. And there is a rote memorization piece to that. That's what's happening here at this first level, right? I need to be able to define things, create lists. I need to memorize information. Unfortunately, especially if you are inside the NASM material or you're going into any certification, right? Many people stay here and they never go beyond that level, that first layer of learning. It's an important one, but it's level 1 of 6. We can't stay there. NASM, especially, they're gonna test you at level 3. And that explains why so many people struggle, even if they get to the exam, right? We're not even talking about getting to the exam. Complete the course, get to the exam, and then they're like, man, Joe, there were questions I never even saw before. Of course there were, because they're testing you at an application level. An application, just so we understand, that means you have the ability to execute, right? The ability to take this information that you were learning, the facts, the knowledge, the ability to apply it in a new scenario in real time, right? That's a whole different layer of being able to comprehend and apply. And I'm gonna tell you guys the missing piece, and I talked about this on the other side, the ability to have discussions and conversations is probably the biggest level up in anyone's learning process, and that's what happens here in layer 2. Understand. The opportunity to take the stuff that we're learning in the first level and ask questions about it and have some dialogue with other people, maybe even debate some of those concepts. And this is a missing piece, as you probably know, if you're going through on your own. It's like, man, I would love to have someone to ask questions, but with most self-study programs, you just don't get that. Oftentimes, you're stuck at this remembering level. We don't have the ability to describe something. You know, it's one thing to recognize on the multiple choice test the answer for reciprocal inhibition. It's another thing to be able to describe it to someone, like what reciprocal inhibition is, and to talk about an example of how it might apply in the gym or an exercise. It's a different layer of thinking, but it makes the learning process a lot more fun, and it makes it a lot more likely that you're gonna do well with that type of information. So what do we do about it? I'm not a big fan of just talking about problems, talking about self-study programs and why they're bad. I'm not giving you guys some solutions. So I want to give you guys a couple of routes you can go. Whether you're already signed up for a self-study program like NASM or you're thinking about it. The first one, invest in coaching. And I say on here too, I don't say just invest in a course, because like we mentioned, there can be self-paced, self-study, self-guided courses. But I think the important thing that you should look for, whether it's working with someone like us, because that's what we do, we run interactive live courses to teach things like the NASM certification and how to become a personal trainer. But even if you do some other program, something else out there, do something that involves live interaction and coaching. I'm telling you right now, the best investment you guys will ever make. I can't even tell you the amount of money that I've spent over the last 16 years on coaching programs. And fortunately for me, every single one of them was live in some component. I had the opportunity to interact with people that I wanted to learn from, I wanted to be more like, and there is no price you can put on that. You will not only do better on the certification, statistics show that, right? Our stats show that, but you will get so much more out of the process, and you're a lot more likely to go on and use it. Regardless, invest in a coaching program, Obviously, we put out this content because I just want you guys to succeed, but I'd be lying if I didn't think that getting involved with a program like ours was the right answer for you guys. So first one, invest in coaching. But you're like, Joe, I already spent all this money with NASM. Like, I don't know, like what's maybe the next step I could take just to see if I could do a little better on my own. Try to build in some of the stuff we talked about on your own, right? You could do a little bit of extra work, and not just you could, you need to do extra work to make sure you get more from the process. The first part is find a community, right? Like for example, we have a Facebook group with over 2,500 individuals like yourself. You guys can find the link in the description below. Just to be able to ask questions. Is it live? Am I able to get feedback in the moment? Not so much, but it's about as close as you can get for a self-guided, self-paced program where you can go and you can post questions. You can learn from other students who have gone through the same process. So if you're not already inside of our Facebook group, then absolutely go jump in there. There's a ton of value to be had. Another thing you guys just need to do, if you guys took anything away from this video, take a look at that image of Bloom's taxonomy of learning. Really, really powerful stuff. Because your goal needs to be, how can I figure out how to at least get to the second, if not the third layer on my own? It's gonna take extra work, but it can be done. We wanna deepen your learning. A good example would be taking concepts, instead of just doing the quizzes that you guys have access to, A, B, C, D, which is great, start doing things like what I call the blank page approach, right? It's like, how much can I just write out about synergistic dominance? Can I take a blank sheet and write everything I know about the overhead squat? Or if you want to go even better, maybe start to bring some of your friends into the gym and just start to break some things down for them. Find some people that would like to learn more about what you're doing and take the time to have some conversation, some discussion. You may fumble over your words a little bit, that's okay. Who cares? The whole goal is to get you to that next layer of having conversation, describing these concepts, and then trying to improve upon that. So that's definitely a great strategy that you could even be doing on your own, and you definitely should. And then the last one is creating structure and accountability. The first one with accountability, one of the reasons I think you should join any type of community is to start to put it out there to other people that like, hey, this is what I'm doing. A lot of times people are scared to like post on social media, tell their friends that they're becoming a certified personal trainer. I think because we need accountability, it's actually one of the first things you should do. Shout it to everybody, because guess what? Now it's out there and now people are gonna ask you about it in a couple of months. Sounds kind of silly, but that alone, even if you look at the research on like weight loss goals, that's a huge component of people actually achieving their goal, is letting other people know about it. So again, if you're not able to get into a program, do these things. Find some community, do some things to deepen your learning, and create some structure and accountability on your own that you can stick to so you guys have a better chance of doing well with your course. We make these videos because I want to see more people like you make it to the gym floor helping clients. The process can be challenging on its own, but like I mentioned, you don't have to do it alone. Make sure you guys check out the link for our free private Facebook group, and if you are interested in a more interactive, more involved live learning experience, then check out the link for our virtual classroom as well.